translator challenging her firing from the FBI. And on the line with us, David Rose from Britain, who wrote the Vanity Fair piece called An Inconvenient Patriot. The subtitle, Love of Country, led Sibel Edmonds to become a translator for the FBI following 9/11. But everything changed when she accused a colleague of covering up illicit activity involving Turkish nationals. Fired after sounding the alarm, she's now fighting for the ideals that made her an American and threatening some very powerful people. David Rose, can you talk about Sibel Edmonds' colleague within the FBI, Melek Khan Dickerson, the relationship and...
Sorry, I've got a very bad line.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hi, go ahead.
Let me just... Yeah, I think there's one very important new development which has not been reported because it took place after the magazine went to press, which is that in addition to making her complaints against the FBI and talking about the apparent evidence of possible espionage which she had discovered on the part of her colleague Melek Khan Dickerson at the FBI and her husband, an Air Force Major, Douglas Dickerson, back in 2002, Sibel Edmonds wrote to the Office of Special Investigation and the Air Force Inspector General, which conducted a very brief investigation in the summer of 2002 and in September 2002, after less than 3 weeks, without interviewing Sibel herself. The Air Force Inspector General wrote to Sibel Edmonds and her then attorneys and said that the case was closed, that they were not pursuing allegations against the Dickersons, which I'll go into in just a moment. But the new development is that just 10 days ago, her attorney in Washington, Mark Zay, received a message from the Office of Special Investigation at the Air Force saying that after this very long gap, nearly 3 years, they were reopening the investigation into the Dickersons, into Khan Dickerson and her husband Douglas, and might at some near future date seek to interview Sibel. Now, it may or may not be coincidental that as part of the research for my article for Vanity Fair, I had submitted about 150 different questions about the entire case to the Air Force, to other parts of the Pentagon, to the DOJ and the FBI, and none of these questions were answered, but they did, of course, set out in enormous detail the various allegations that have been raised. Following the receipt of those questions, the investigation was formally reopened, which is, I think, perhaps significant. So as to the substance of the allegations, in essence, it's quite simple. What Sibel Edmonds has alleged, and has indeed been alleging now since the end of 2001, beginning 2002, is that towards the end of 2001, Khan Dickerson, her fairly new colleague at the FBI, and her husband Douglas called unexpectedly at the home she shares with her husband Matthew in Alexandria, Virginia, and over tea one Sunday morning, the Dickerson suggested that Sibel and her husband might like to join an organization called the American-Turkish Council, which is essentially a business group which exists to foster trade deals, mainly of a military nature, between America and Turkey. And they suggested that, according to Sibel and her husband, they suggested that if they did this, they might become rich. And Sibel was particularly surprised at this because they also boasted that they knew an individual who had close links with this organization, who was also an official at the Turkish embassy. And in fact, although she hadn't said so in her application to join the FBI, Khan Dickerson had at one stage worked for the American-Turkish Council herself as an intern, and clearly had got a close relationship with this particular diplomat. Well, after that, and this is all set out, by the way, in legal filings, and much of it is now completely confirmed by the DOJ Inspector General's report into Sibel's case, the unclassified part of it. Following that, Sibel says that Khan Dickerson tried to stop Sibel listening to wiretap conversations by this particular official who was a friend of the Dickersons, and also conversations by others who appeared to be involved in various illegal activity. So she went to other officials at the FBI, to a particular agent, Dennis Hastert, who was in charge of counterintelligence and counterespionage regarding Turkey, who immediately suspected that this was possibly some kind of recruitment exercise, that she was being asked to participate in some kind of illegal espionage operation and perhaps was being offered some kind of inducement. It was when she started to complain about this and took her complaints up the ladder within the FBI and eventually to the Congress that she was fired, and that's the substance of the case. But clearly, given that the DOJ Inspector General has now corroborated and supported her allegations and has said that many have bases in fact, and that the FBI fired her as an act of retaliation when it should have investigated the claims much more seriously, the fact that the Air Force is now again looking at Major Douglas Dickerson, Can Dickerson's husband, who remains on active duty in Europe, is clearly of some significance.
And David Rose, the issue of the Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, and conversations over her that link his office with improper dealings with Turkish nationals. Can you talk about particular legislation?
Well, there were two things, I understand, which those who were wiretapped, whose conversations were recorded and translated, referred to. One was the controversial deal to sell helicopters, attack helicopters to Turkey, which was an issue of great controversy in the late 1990s. At that point, Turkey was fighting a pretty hot civil war with the Kurdish separatists in the east of the country. There were allegations of human rights abuses and so forth, and some in America thought it was wrong that Turkey should be sold several $1 billion worth of attack helicopters in those circumstances. So some of the calls allegedly referred to the hope that the Congress would approve that very large weapons sale. But the second occasion, or the second event, which is allegedly referred to in these wiretaps, is the Armenian Genocide resolution, which came before the House in 2000. Now, the Armenian lobby has made attempts, with some support. I mean, Senator Bob Dole was a very great supporter of this back in the 1980s. The Armenians have tried to get the Congress to pass a genocide resolution so that, but which would basically state that the mass murder of Armenians in Turkey that was carried out after 1915 was a genocide, and some countries have indeed passed such resolutions. Some states have in America. This resolution had never really got anywhere until, in 2000, Dennis Hastert, as House Speaker, announced he would support it. Now, at the time, analysts noted that there was a tight congressional race in California, in which the Armenian community might just swing it in favor of the Republican incumbent. But what is significant, that the resolution had passed the Human Rights Subcommittee of the House, it passed the International Relations Committee, but on the eve of the House vote, the full House vote, Dennis Hastert withdrew the resolution. Now, at the time, he explained this by saying that he had had a letter from President Clinton asking him to withdraw it because it wouldn't be in America's interests to have such a resolution, which, of course, was bitterly resisted inside Turkey, passed through the House. Well, it is slightly curious when you think about it. I mean, Dennis Hastert was not known as one of the authors of Clinton's impeachment for deferring to his judgment on many occasions, but on this occasion he apparently did. Well, whether or not these allegations have substance is not something that I'm able to state with any knowledge, but it is said that in the wiretaps that were translated by Sibel Edmonds, reference was made to this very controversial question of the House vote, and one of the Turkish targets of these wiretaps claimed that the price for getting Dennis Hastert to withdraw the resolution would be $500,000. Now, I do emphasize there's no evidence at all that he received such a payment, but that is what is said to have been recorded in one of the wiretaps.
We have to wrap up the discussion, and we only have a few seconds. But Sibel Edmonds, are you taking a challenge to your dismissal, appealing your dismissal to the Supreme Court?
Yes, Amy, last week we filed our petition with the Supreme Court, and in a few weeks there will be amicus filed in our support by 9/11 family members and other government watchdog organizations. And basically this is the last stop. This is the last channel, because as you know, we have never been given our day in court due to the state secret privilege and the gag orders. And also I am pursuing this still with the Congress. And I will continue until these issues come to light and until the Americans know what is going on in their government.
Well, Sibel Edmonds and David Rose of Vanity Fair. Sibel Edmonds, former FBI translator, thanks for joining us. Our website, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thank you.